The wind howled across the plains of Elisara, carrying with it fine, icy dust that burned like tiny needles against the skin. The twin moons cast a cold light across the jagged landscape, and the horizon seemed endless, an unbroken stretch of barren rock, frozen soil, and skeletal remnants of long-abandoned settlements. Somewhere in the middle of this harsh, unwelcoming land, a small cabin stood, stubbornly resisting the emptiness around it. Its walls were weathered wood, reinforced with metal plates salvaged from old star freighters. A single chimney curled smoke into the night sky, a beacon of warmth and life in the vast wilderness. Inside, the cowboy moved silently, his hands steady as he refilled the lanterns scattered around the room. He was a tall man, with shoulders broad from years of labor and arms marked by faded scars. His face, rugged and tanned from countless suns, carried a quiet weight, a past he rarely spoke of. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and preserved food, a mixture of practicality and comfort. On the small table lay a deck of scratched playing cards, a half-empty mug of tea, and a folded map of the surrounding area. He paused at the window, listening. The storm had grown stronger, the wind rattling the shutters and shaking the roof. Out here, in the frontier reaches of Elisara, storms could be deadly, especially to anyone unprepared. He sighed, rubbing his jaw, and returned to the hearth. Life had been quieter these past months. Quiet, predictable, safe. That was the way he liked it, until the knock came. The sound was soft at first, almost swallowed by the roar of the wind. He froze, listening. Another knock followed, more insistent this time. The cowboy's hand went instinctively to the side of his chair, resting on the grip of the old pulse pistol he kept within reach, though he never liked to use it unless necessary. He moved to the door. Peering through the reinforced viewport, a figure crouched in the swirling dust. She was small against the storm, wrapped in a heavy cloak that flapped violently in the wind. One arm clutched something to her chest, and her hood was pulled low, hiding most of her face. Still, there was something in the way she moved, a mix of exhaustion and determination that made him hesitate. He opened the door a crack. "You lost?" His voice was low, cautious. She looked up, eyes wide and wet from the cold, revealing a pale face framed by dark hair. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. I need shelter." The cowboy assessed her quickly. She looked human, though out here, any stranger could be dangerous, and yet there was no weapon in her hands, no sign of aggression, just a weary traveler, desperate and alone. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. "Come in, but move fast. Storm's getting worse. Man, I think. Come in." She stumbled over the threshold, coughing and shivering. The cabin's warmth hit her like a wave. She pulled back her hood, revealing the rest of her face. There was something fragile about her, yet something that refused to break. Even in the face of the storm, she glanced around, eyes lingering on the small details, the stacked firewood, the neat rows of canned supplies, the careful way the cabin had been kept. "I'm Mara," she said finally, pulling her cloak tighter around her. I've been traveling for days." The cowboy nodded slowly. "Name's Colt." He motioned toward the hearth. "Sit, warm up. Tea?" She sank into the chair near the fire, her hands extended toward the heat. Colt poured water into a small kettle, setting it to boil over the fire, and then filled 2 mugs with steaming tea. He handed one to her, watching as she drank, taking small, careful sips, as if the warmth itself was a medicine. "You don't talk much, do you?" Mara asked after a moment. "I talk when I need to," he replied, not unkindly. "Storm outside, stranger inside. You survive best when you pay attention." Mara smiled faintly. A brief light in the shadowed cabin. "I've survived worse," she said. Her voice carried a quiet strength, though it trembled with fatigue. "But I didn't expect anyone to be out here anymore." Colt sat across from her, watching her carefully. "Most people aren't. That's why I stay." A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of the fire and the howl of the wind. Mara's gaze drifted to the window. Outside, the storm raged on, a blur of white and gray. I'm looking for a place," she whispered. "A safe place, somewhere I can think." Colt raised an eyebrow. "Thinking's dangerous out here. You're lucky you found me." "I know," she said softly, almost to herself. Then, louder, she added, I have something important. Something that could change everything. But I can't do it alone." Colt leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Everything, huh?" he murmured. "Sounds heavy. You sure you're ready for that kind of trouble?" Mara nodded, though her hands shook slightly. "I don't have a choice. Someone's after it. After me. I can't fail." The wind outside gusted violently, rattling the cabin once more. Colt poured himself a sip of tea, letting the warmth settle into his chest. He had faced many dangers in his life. Raiders, alien mercenaries, cosmic storms, but something about this woman, about her determination, struck a chord deep inside him. "You're lucky the storm brought you here," he said finally. "You'd have frozen out there in hours." Thank you," Mara said, her voice steadying. "I didn't know where else to go." Colt nodded. "Sit tight. I'll keep you safe tonight. Then tomorrow, we figure out the rest." For a while, they sat in silence. The storm outside seemed almost distant now, reduced to background noise behind the warmth of the cabin. Mara's eyes drifted to the walls. The old maps, the little mementos. Colt kept a photograph of a family he never spoke of. A rusted starship model. A carved wooden horse. You live alone?" she asked softly. Colt shrugged. "Mostly. Used to have a partner once. Gone now." Mara nodded, understanding without needing words. She sipped her tea again, feeling the first real warmth she had in days. There was something comforting about this man, something steady in the chaos of the universe around them. Hours passed. The storm outside began to weaken, though the wind still howled like distant beasts. Mara finally spoke again. "Why do you help me?" Colt paused, looking into the fire. "Because someone has to. Out here, no one survives alone. And I've been alone too long." Her gaze softened, but the weight of her journey remained in her eyes. "I'm glad I found you." A long silence followed, but it was no longer uncomfortable. It was a quiet understanding between two people who had both known loss, danger, and the harsh truths of life on the frontier. Outside, the storm was fading, the night calm but still cold. Inside, the candlelight flickered on wooden walls, casting dancing shadows as if celebrating the small spark of connection between them. For Colt, the night stretched on with quiet thoughts, remembering past battles, past regrets, and now, a new responsibility. For Mara, the cabin became a sanctuary, a place to catch her breath, to plan, and to hope. And as the first signs of dawn crept across the horizon, painting the icy plains in soft blue and silver, a fragile trust had been built. They did not speak of tomorrow, of dangers that awaited them in the vastness of space or on the frozen surface of Elisara. Tonight, they only existed in the warmth of the cabin, in the quiet bond that had begun to form between the cowboy and the weary traveler. Somewhere in the universe, the storm would end. Somewhere, life would continue. And for now, in the candlelit cabin, two souls found a fleeting peace in each other's presence, a moment of calm before the storm of adventure that awaited them. The storm had passed, leaving the plains of Elisara bathed in pale sunlight. The icy dust that had danced through the air for days settled into stillness, and a quiet calm stretched across the barren landscape. Outside the cabin, the world was a sharp contrast to the warmth and comfort inside. Colt had risen early, as was his habit, tending to the small fire that now burned steadily in the hearth. Mara stirred from a corner, wrapped in a thick blanket he had offered her. The exhaustion of her journey had not fully lifted, but she felt lighter, more grounded, under the cowboy's watchful eyes. She rose, stretching, and glanced around the cabin, noticing the meticulous order he had kept. Every tool, every piece of equipment, seemed to have a purpose. "You move well for someone who's been traveling through a storm," Colt said from the hearth. He had taken up his old habit of sharpening tools, the soft scrape of metal against stone echoing quietly in the cabin. Mara smiled faintly. "I have to," she replied. "Storms and worse things don't wait for anyone to rest." Colt studied her silently for a moment. "And what kind of worse things are we talking about?" he asked. Finally, his voice was calm, but there was a sharpness in his tone. "The kind that told you he had survived more than he ever wanted to admit." She hesitated. Her fingers fidgeted with the edges of her cloak as she considered how much to reveal. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's a group. They're hunting for something. Something important my husband discovered before he died. I can't tell anyone else. Not yet. Not until I know I can trust them." Colt's grip on the sharpening stone tightened slightly. "Hunting you, or hunting what he found?" "Both," she said. Her eyes flicked toward the floor, troubled. "I don't even know if they'll stop at me. I don't want anyone else to get hurt." For a moment, the cabin fell silent, except for the crackle of the fire. Colt set down the stone and crossed his arms. He didn't speak immediately. Trust was hard-earned in the frontier, and he had seen too many people break under pressure. Yet something about Mara told him she would endure, even when others would falter. "I've faced my share of trouble," he said finally. "And I've learned something important. People survive by relying on each other, even when it seems impossible." He paused. "You'll have to trust me, as I trust you, if we're going to make it through this." Mara lifted her eyes to meet his. There was an honesty there, a quiet strength, and for the first time since her husband's death, she felt that she could take a breath without fear. I can do that," she said softly. Colt nodded. "Good. Then we start with what we know. You tell me about this thing, and I'll figure out a way to keep it safe." She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "It's coordinates," she said. "Coordinates to a system that hasn't been charted yet. My husband, he believed it could be a place for new colonies, a safe place for humans. But others want it for power. They don't care who gets hurt. The Wode are under Rees." Colt frowned. "Coordinates," he repeated, as if testing the weight of the word. "In the wrong hands, that could be disastrous." "Yes," she whispered. "That's why I had to leave everything behind. I can't go back to the settlements. They won't protect me. And I can't let them get these coordinates." Colt leaned back in his chair, his mind working quickly. He had survived countless threats before raiders, alien mercenaries, even rogue AI patrols. But this was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for humanity's future. And somehow, he knew he had to be part of it. "Then we plan," he said. "We survive, we travel, we make sure no one gets to them before you can do what needs to be done." Mara nodded, relief mixing with determination. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. The cowboys' calm presence was grounding. Like a steady rock in a turbulent sea, they spent the morning organizing supplies, checking the cabin's defenses, and going over maps. Colt had stored enough food and water for weeks, along with tools, spare parts, and a small but reliable blaster. Mara shared her knowledge of the coordinates, though only in vague details, enough to plan a safe route without revealing the full secret. The two worked in silence at times, communicating through gestures and glances, a growing rhythm forming between them. By mid-afternoon, they stepped outside to assess the plains. The sun reflected off the icy ground, creating a shimmering expanse that stretched as far as the eye could see. Mara shivered, not from the cold, but from the realization of how vulnerable they were. One wrong step here could mean death, and the thought of the hunters tracking her added a sharp edge to her fear. Colt noticed her hesitation. "Keep your head down," he said, placing a hand near her shoulder. "We move carefully. Watch the sky and the horizon. You follow my lead." She nodded. There was a quiet reassurance in his voice that calmed her racing thoughts. For a brief moment, the harshness of Elisara felt a little less overwhelming. As they returned to the cabin, Mara's thoughts drifted to her husband, the man whose discoveries had set this chain of events in motion. She had loved him fiercely, and losing him had left a hollow ache she carried every day. Yet, in Colt, she found a different kind of support. A silent promise that someone could help her bear the weight of the mission and the danger. That evening, as the twin moons rose again in the night sky, they shared a simple meal by the fire. Colt cooked a modest stew from preserved rations, and Mara helped, chopping vegetables with a practiced hand. They spoke little, but the silence was comfortable, filled with an unspoken understanding. After the meal, Mara pulled out a small journal, worn and frayed, and began writing. Colt watched her for a while, then went to the window, staring at the distant horizon. He could feel the tension building already. He could sense the hunters approaching, even if they were still far away. "Mara," he said quietly, not turning from the window, "you're stronger than you think. Don't let fear take over. We'll face this together. You won't be alone." She looked up from her journal, her eyes meeting his. "I know," she said softly. "And I'm glad I'm not. It makes a difference, knowing someone will fight beside you." Colt gave a small nod, a rare smile touching his lips. "That's all anyone can do out here. Fight, survive, and keep moving forward. No one can do it alone." The night passed slowly, filled with small gestures of care and understanding. Colt checked the locks on the cabin, ensured the fire would last through the cold hours, and kept watch by the window. Mara rested nearby, but her mind was active, planning, preparing, and dreaming of what could be. There was a quiet bond forming between them, built on trust, shared purpose, and a growing recognition of each other's strength. By the time dawn crept across the horizon, painting the icy plains in shades of silver and blue, Mara felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew the journey ahead would be dangerous. The hunters were out there, and the universe offered no guarantees. But she also knew she had Colt, a steadfast presence in the chaos, a protector and a partner in survival. And Colt, watching her from across the cabin, felt the stirrings of a rare emotion he had long buried, something beyond duty or survival. A connection that promised companionship in a lonely, hostile universe. The first part of their adventure was complete. The storm had passed, the cabin had sheltered them, and a fragile trust had grown between two people from different worlds, united by a common purpose. Outside, the plains awaited, vast and indifferent, but inside, hope flickered like the candlelight in the hearth. Together, they would step into the unknown, facing dangers that no one else could. And in that partnership, in that silent understanding, humanity's enduring strength, the ability to connect, to survive, and to protect, shone brighter than the harsh Elisaran sun. The morning sun rose pale and cold over Elisara's frozen plains, casting long shadows across the jagged terrain. Colt and Mara stepped outside the cabin, surveying the horizon. The storm from the previous days had cleared, but the land still held its harsh, unforgiving presence. Snow and dust swirled lightly in the wind. The distant mountains, sharp against the sky. Colt scanned the area with practiced eyes. "This place is quiet now," he said, his voice low. "Too quiet." Mara frowned, adjusting her cloak against the cold. "You think they're close?" "I don't know," Colt replied, "but I can feel it. There's movement out there." He pointed toward the distant ridge, where faint shapes seemed to shimmer against the sunlight. Hunters. Could be scouts. Could be more. Mara's stomach tightened. She had prepared herself for danger, but seeing the first signs of it brought a fresh wave of fear. Yet she refused to let it show. She had a purpose, and she couldn't falter now. "Then we move," she said, her voice steady. "We can't wait for them to find us." Colt nodded. "Good." Grab what you need. We'll leave the cabin for now. It's safer on the move. Inside, they packed their essentials. Colt checked the supplies carefully: rations, water, repair tools, weapons, and a small navigational device for the uncharted system Mara had mentioned. Mara secured the journal containing the coordinates, hiding it beneath layers of clothing. Every item they took had to be essential. Anything extra could slow them down or reveal their location. By mid-morning, they were ready. Colt led the way, moving with quiet precision across the icy plains. He chose a route that followed natural ridges and small gullies, using the terrain to stay hidden while maintaining a steady pace. Mara followed closely, learning quickly how to move silently, how to read the subtle signs in the snow, how to trust Colt's instincts. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, but the horizon remained empty, at least to the untrained eye. Yet Colt's senses were alert, detecting the faintest movements, the smallest disturbances in the snow. He could feel eyes on them, waiting, observing. "They're close," he said finally, stopping behind a large rock formation. He crouched, motioning Mara to do the same. "See those tracks?" Mara leaned in, tracing the faint impressions in the ice. "Hunters? Aliens," Colt said. "And human mercenaries, probably working with them. They know what you carry. They're looking for it. And for you." Mara swallowed hard but kept her composure. "Then we can't let them catch us. We have to get to the ship." Colt nodded. "Exactly. But rushing will get us killed. We need to be smart." For the next few hours, they moved cautiously. Colt led them along narrow paths, avoiding open plains where they could be spotted. They navigated around jagged rocks, shallow crevasses, and icy ridges. Mara was amazed at Colt's skill, the way he could read the terrain, anticipate danger, and adjust their path with near-perfect precision. As the sun began to lower, the distant shapes appeared again. This time, there was no mistaking them. 3 hovercraft glided across the plains, moving in a slow, calculated search pattern. The hunters were methodical, and their sensors could detect heat and movement from miles away. "They've found the trail," Colt whispered. "We need to hide." Now, he guided Mara behind a cluster of large boulders, partially hidden by snowdrifts. They crouched in the cold, silent, as the hovercraft passed by, sensors scanning the area with red beams of light. Mara's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. Colt placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Relax," he said quietly. "Breathe. They can't see us if we don't move. Just follow my lead." The hovercraft passed, but Colt knew it was only a matter of time before they were spotted. "We move at night," he said. "It'll be safer under darkness. You rest until then. We'll cover the rest of the journey carefully." Mara nodded, sitting against the rocks, trying to conserve her strength. Colt kept watch, scanning the horizon, keeping his blaster ready. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, the cold biting into their bones, but they survived, hidden, waiting for the right moment. When night finally fell, the landscape changed. The moonlight reflected off the ice, creating a silver-white glare. Colt led Mara carefully, moving through shadows and avoiding open spaces. Their destination was the old scout ship, hidden in a narrow canyon, a relic of Colt's past missions. They reached it without being detected, thanks to Colt's careful navigation. The ship was small but sturdy, with enough power for rapid travel and stealth. Its exterior was scratched and weathered, evidence of many years of use. But Colt had maintained it meticulously. Inside, Colt activated the ship's systems. Lights flickered on, and the soft hum of the engines filled the cabin. Mara took a moment to absorb the technology, the tools, the comfort of a machine that could carry them away from danger. "It's incredible," she said softly. "You've done all this alone?" Colt gave a small smile. "Survival requires preparation. This ship saved my life more times than I can count." They settled into the cockpit, and Colt began plotting a course toward the uncharted system. Mara watched him work, amazed at his skill. He moved with precision and confidence, checking every system, calculating every risk. She realized that no matter what dangers awaited them, Colt had the experience and intelligence to keep them alive. Suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped, indicating movement outside. Colt's eyes narrowed. "Hunters," he muttered. "They've tracked us here." Mara felt a surge of fear but forced herself to stay calm. "What do we do?" she asked. Colt's hand rested on the controls. "We defend ourselves long enough to escape," he said. "Follow my instructions exactly." The hovercrafts descended on the canyon, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. Colt activated the ship's defensive systems, deploying smoke screens and energy barriers. Mara helped by monitoring the sensors, keeping track of approaching threats. The first skirmish was tense. Energy blasts struck the ship's hull, shaking it violently. Colt maneuvered expertly, dodging attacks, returning fire only when necessary. Mara watched in awe as he handled the situation with calm precision, her trust in him growing with every passing second. Hours passed in this tense dance, the ship moving through the canyon, dodging attacks, and using the terrain to their advantage. Colt's strategy was simple but effective. Avoid direct confrontation, outsmart the hunters, and keep moving. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the hovercrafts retreated, unable to match the cowboys' skill and knowledge of the terrain. The canyon fell silent once more, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. Mara exhaled, relief flooding her chest. We made it," she said softly. Almost in disbelief, Colt nodded, his eyes still scanning the horizon. "For now," he said. "They won't give up. But we've bought ourselves some time. Time to reach the system and keep the coordinates safe." Mara looked at him, seeing the determination in his eyes, the unwavering focus, and she felt a renewed sense of hope. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Colt gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "We're in this together. That's all that matters." As they set the ship's course for the uncharted system, Mara realized that the journey ahead would be dangerous, filled with threats they couldn't yet imagine. But with Colt at her side, she felt a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Together, they would face whatever the universe threw at them. And in that moment, amidst the tension and uncertainty, a bond formed not of words, but of trust, courage, and the shared determination to survive. They were ready to step into the unknown, facing danger head-on, and proving that humanity's strength was not just in technology or strategy, but in the ability to endure, to adapt, and to fight for what mattered most. The small scout ship cut through the night sky, leaving the frozen plains of Elisara far behind. Inside, Colt worked the controls with practiced precision, his eyes scanning the holographic display for threats, obstacles, or anomalies. Mara sat beside him, the coordinates to the uncharted system secure in her lap. Her fingers traced the worn pages of the journal, the letters her husband had written years ago feeling alive in her hands. "This ship is incredible," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the low hum of the engines. "I never imagined technology like this existed outside the main colonies." Colt gave a faint smile, his eyes not leaving the display. "It's old, but reliable. Been through worse than what we'll face out there. It won't fail us if we treat it right." Mara nodded, feeling a mix of awe and relief. The journey ahead was uncertain. The coordinates held promise for humanity, but danger lurked in every shadow of the universe. Aliens, mercenaries, and the unknown all lay ahead, waiting for mistakes. Yet here, in the controlled environment of the ship, there was a sense of calm, a temporary sanctuary from the perils below. Hours passed, the stars stretching endlessly around them. Elisara became a distant memory, a frozen world they had escaped thanks to Colt's skill. But the journey was far from safe. Mara kept watch alongside him, monitoring the sensors for any sign of pursuit. Occasionally, blips appeared, faint traces of heat or motion, but each time, Colt's quick thinking allowed them to evade detection. As they passed through a dense asteroid belt, the ship shook from the impacts of small fragments. Colt's hands moved over the controls, dodging larger debris, and activating shields to absorb minor hits. Mara held tightly to the console, her heart racing with every sudden jolt. "Keep calm," Colt said, his voice steady. "Panicking will get us destroyed. Focus on the path. Trust the ship. And follow my lead." Mara nodded, forcing herself to breathe evenly. Slowly, the asteroid belt cleared, leaving them in the open void of space once more. The uncharted system lay ahead, distant but tantalizingly close. And with every passing light year, the weight of their mission pressed upon them. "Colt," Mara said finally, her voice soft but urgent. "What if they catch us before we reach it? The hunters, the aliens." Colt glanced at her, his expression calm but serious. "We're fast. We're smart. And we're unpredictable. They can't plan for us the way we can plan for ourselves. We'll get there first. We have to believe that." Mara's hands tightened around the journal. "I want to believe. I really do. But every time I close my eyes, I imagine them finding me, taking everything." Colt reached over, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Then don't close your eyes," he said simply. "Stay aware. Stay alert. And stay with me. That's how we survive. Together." For a moment, the universe seemed to shrink to the space between them, the hum of the engines, and the blinking lights of the consoles. Mara took a deep breath, feeling the first real comfort she had since her husband's death. Here, she was not alone. Here, she had someone who would fight beside her. As night fell in the distant reaches of space, a new challenge emerged. The ship's sensors detected a cloaked vessel, moving fast and silent, approaching from the rear. Mara's eyes widened. "They found us." Colt's jaw tightened. "Just scouts. Probably trying to slow us down. Maybe even scare us off. We can handle them." He adjusted the ship's trajectory, maneuvering to take advantage of nearby debris fields and gravitational pulls from a distant moon. The cloaked vessel followed, but Colt's clever navigation made it impossible for them to get a clear shot. Mara monitored the sensors, relaying information on the enemy's speed and angle. "Looks like two ships," she said quietly. "Both trying to flank us." Colt's hands moved rapidly over the controls, weaving between asteroids, using gravity wells, and activating defensive shields. Energy blasts from the pursuing ships struck the shields, sending shocks through the hull. Mara gritted her teeth, her heart pounding, but she followed Colt's instructions without hesitation. "You're doing well," Colt said, a rare note of praise in his voice. "Keep watching the sensors. Call out anything unusual." Mara nodded. "I've got it. They're closing in from the left. Brace yourself." Colt triggered the ship's defensive system, releasing decoy flares and activating the energy pulse that temporarily disabled the sensors of the pursuing ships. The maneuver worked perfectly. The hunters lost track of them, forced to slow down and regroup. "Good work," Colt said, allowing himself a small grin. "We've shaken them off, for now." Mara exhaled, relief flooding her. "That was incredible. I didn't think we'd make it." Colt's expression turned serious again. "This is only the beginning. They'll be back. And next time, they'll be smarter. We need to reach the system before they even get a hint of it." The next few days passed in tense routine. They traveled in near silence, except for updates on the sensors, minor system adjustments, and occasional conversation to keep morale steady. Mara found herself marveling at Colt's skill and calm under pressure. He navigated the ship with precision, always thinking ahead, always calculating the safest path. She realized that his experience was their greatest weapon. During these quiet moments, Mara shared more about her husband's research, carefully explaining why the system was so important. Colt listened intently, asking questions, and offering practical advice on how they could prepare for whatever awaited them. Mara felt a growing sense of respect for him, not just as a protector, but as a partner in the mission. "Humans are clever," Colt said one evening, his voice thoughtful. "We survive in harsh worlds, adapt to impossible conditions, and find ways to keep moving forward. That's why we endure, even when everything seems against us. Mara nodded, her gaze on the stars stretching endlessly outside the viewport. I've seen that. My husband believed in it too. That's why this system, it could give people a chance, a new beginning, and we're going to make sure it happens, Colt said firmly. No one's taking it from you. Not aliens, not mercenaries, not anyone. For a moment, the quiet hum of the ship was the only sound. The stars outside seemed endless, but inside, there was focus, determination, and a shared purpose. They were no longer just survivors, they were guardians of something bigger, something that could change the future for humanity. As they approached the outskirts of the uncharted system, new dangers appeared. Unstable asteroid fields, rogue comets, and strange gravitational anomalies tested their navigation skills. Colt adjusted the course constantly, while Mara monitored the sensors, predicting possible hazards. Their teamwork became seamless, a dance of survival, intuition, and trust. Finally, after days of tense travel, the first planet of the uncharted system appeared on the sensors. It was barren at first glance, but careful scanning revealed signs of ancient technology. Long abandoned, the potential for life, colonization, and discovery was enormous. Mara's heart swelled with hope and awe. We made it, she whispered, almost in disbelief. Colt's eyes stayed on the displays, scanning for threats. We're here, he said. But the real work starts now. We secure the location, gather what we need, and make sure no one else can get it. Mara nodded, gripping the controls as if drawing strength from the steady hum of the ship. Together, she said. Together, Colt echoed. For the first time since leaving Elisara, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet relief. The journey through the stars had been perilous, full of unseen dangers and relentless tension. Yet they had endured. Their bond had strengthened. Their skills had sharpened. And their purpose had solidified. The uncharted system lay ahead, mysterious and full of promise. They would face dangers still unknown, alien technology, hostile forces, and cosmic hazards, but Colt and Mara were ready. The universe was vast, indifferent, and often cruel. But humanity's resilience, courage, and ingenuity would guide them forward. And as the ship drifted closer to the first planet, illuminated by the pale light of distant stars, both understood that the journey was far from over. Yet in that moment, hope burned brighter than fear. Together, they would step into the unknown, prepared to fight for what mattered, and to prove that humanity could endure anything even in the darkest reaches of space. The scout ship descended toward the first planet of the uncharted system, its engines humming steadily. Below, the surface stretched wide and barren, dotted with the remains of ancient structures and alien machinery. The planet seemed quiet, untouched by life for centuries, yet it held the promise of a new beginning for humanity. Colt and Mara stared at it, their hearts filled with anticipation and the knowledge that danger was never far behind. We need to land carefully, Colt said, his hands steady on the controls. We don't know what kind of defenses the old systems might still have. Mara nodded, scanning the terrain with the sensors. There's a flat area just ahead, she pointed. Looks safe enough for a landing. Colt adjusted the ship's trajectory. The landing was smooth, the ship settling gently onto the rocky surface. Outside, the cold wind of the planet bit through the cockpit, and Mara felt the weight of the moment. They had reached their destination. The uncharted system that her husband had discovered. The place that could offer humanity a new chance to thrive. They exited the ship, weapons ready, senses alert. The structures nearby were alien in design, tall and metallic, some glowing faintly with power that had lasted for centuries. Mara's excitement was tempered by caution. She knew that any misstep could awaken dangers they were unprepared for. Colt led the way, moving with careful precision. His eyes scanned every shadow, every corner, every possible hiding place. Mara followed, relying on him as much as her own instincts. Together, they approached the largest structure, a domed facility, partially buried under rock and dust. "This must be it," Mara whispered, her voice full of awe. "The hub. Where my husband found the coordinates' true purpose." Colt examined the entrance. "It looks abandoned," he said. "But I've learned never to trust appearances. Stay close." They stepped inside. The interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, illuminated by faint, flickering lights. Strange symbols and controls lined the walls, remnants of an advanced civilization. Mara ran her fingers over the panels, careful not to trigger anything accidentally. "This place, it's incredible," she said softly. "The technology, it could support entire colonies, maybe even terraform planets." Colt nodded. "And that's exactly why others will come looking for it. We can't waste time." They moved deeper into the facility, reaching a central control room. Screens lit up as Mara approached the main console. The coordinates and data her husband had collected, appearing before her eyes. She took a deep breath, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This is it," she said. "This is everything he found. We just need to secure it before anyone else arrives." Before Colt could respond, a sharp vibration ran through the floor. Sensors beeped urgently. Mara's heart sank. "Hunters!" she exclaimed. Through the doorway, shadowy figures appeared, human mercenaries and alien scouts, their weapons trained on them. Colt's eyes narrowed. They were faster than I expected. "Mara, stay behind me." He moved with lightning speed, drawing his blaster. Mara readied her own, a compact energy pistol Colt had given her. The hunters advanced cautiously, not expecting resistance, yet confident in their numbers. Colt's strategy was simple but brilliant. He used the facility's structure to their advantage, leading the hunters through narrow corridors, around obstacles, and into traps he had quickly improvised. Energy blasts ricocheted off the walls, lights flickering violently. Mara fired when necessary, each shot precise and measured. The hunters were skilled, but Colt's experience and Mara's quick adaptation gave them the upper hand. They ducked, rolled, and maneuvered through the corridors with a coordination born of trust and instinct. "You're doing great," Colt shouted over the chaos. "Keep moving." Mara's confidence grew. She realized she wasn't just following Colt, she was contributing, making a difference, and proving her own strength. Together, they fought with determination, outsmarting the hunters at every turn. Finally, they reached the central chamber. Mara activated the main console, initiating a series of security protocols that locked the facility and triggered defensive systems. Energy barriers rose, separating them from the hunters and buying crucial time. Colt covered her, firing whenever anyone got too close. The hunters pounded against the barriers. But the technology of the facility, combined with Colt's tactics, held them at bay. "Almost done," Mara called, her fingers flying over the controls. "Just a few more seconds." The final sequence completed. The facility locked down completely, preventing unauthorized access and activating automated defenses that would protect it until they could return with proper reinforcements. Mara exhaled, relief flooding her. Colt lowered his blaster, turning to her. "You did it," he said, a rare smile on his face. "We did it." Mara smiled back, exhaustion and triumph mingling. "We made it together." Outside, the hunters had retreated, unable to penetrate the defenses. The alien scouts vanished into the shadows, and the mercenaries were forced to withdraw, realizing they had underestimated their prey. Colt and Mara stood in the central chamber, victorious, their bond stronger than ever. "This place," Mara said, looking around. "It's humanity's future. We've secured it, but we can't stay. We need to report back, tell the colonies, make sure this discovery is used for good." Colt nodded. "Agreed. And we will. But we also know danger won't disappear. Others will come looking, and we'll have to be ready." Mara placed a hand on his arm, grateful for his steadfast presence. I don't know what I would have done without you. You kept me alive, and you helped me believe that humanity can endure, even in the face of danger. Colt shrugged modestly. We're stronger together. That's all that matters. Humans survive because we adapt, because we fight, and because we refuse to give up. The sun rose higher over the planet, casting light on the ancient facility and the frozen plains beyond. It was a new day, a new beginning. Humanity had endured another trial, proving that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the deadliest threats. Colt and Mara returned to the ship, ready to make the journey back to the colonies. They carried with them not just the coordinates, but the promise of hope, the symbol of human resilience, and the knowledge that together they could face whatever the universe threw at them. As they lifted off, leaving the barren planet behind, Mara looked at Colt. This is only the beginning, she said. Colt smiled faintly. Yes, but it's a good beginning. And as long as we stick together, humanity will prevail. We'll survive. We'll thrive. That's what makes us human. Mara nodded, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The journey had been perilous, filled with uncertainty and danger, but they had succeeded. They had proven that even in the farthest reaches of space, human ingenuity, courage, and heart could triumph. The scout ship soared through the stars, leaving the uncharted system behind. Ahead lay new worlds, new challenges, and new opportunities. And together, Colt and Mara would face them all. Guardians of humanity's future, symbols of what humans could achieve when they refused to give up. For in the vast universe, full of darkness and uncertainty, the light of humanity burned brightly, a light forged through struggle, strengthened by trust, and carried forward by those who refused to surrender. And in that light, hope endured, unbroken and unwavering, ready to guide humanity through the stars.